The lake had always been my refuge. Out here, 2 hours north of Minneapolis, tucked between pine ridges and a glassy stretch of water that shimmered gold at sunset, I could breathe. My cabin wasn't much by most people's standards. Cedar siding faded by years of Minnesota winters, a dock that creaked like an old man's knees, and a tin roof that sang when the rain came down heavy. But to me, it was freedom. And maybe that's why the HOA hated it so much. Yeah, you heard that right. Out here, on the edge of a lake that should have been God's free country, somehow a group of retired busybodies had wormed their way into everyone's lives. The association controlled everything, from what kind of shingles you could use, to the paint color of your mailbox, to how long your truck could sit in the driveway before someone wrote you up. They called it preserving community standards. I called it tyranny with a smiley face. And at the head of it all was Marjorie Turner, or as the neighborhood kids nicknamed her, Karen of the Lake. She had the cropped blonde bob, the oversized sunglasses, and a voice that could carry across the water even when you weren't trying to listen. Always armed with a clipboard, she patrolled the properties like some kind of suburban sheriff, sniffing out violations no one else even cared about. For the last 2 years, I'd been her favorite target. My firewood stack was unsightly. My dog's bark was excessive. My deck chairs were not approved outdoor furniture. You'd think I was running a landfill, the way she carried on. But last summer, she went too far. I'd barely had time to pour my morning coffee when I heard tires crunching over gravel. By the time I stepped onto the porch, Marjorie was already halfway up my steps, waving a folded sheet of paper in one hand and glaring at the canoe I'd just dragged ashore. "Daniel, you've been warned," she said, planting herself like she owned the place. "That canoe is not permitted to be stored outside of an enclosed structure. It's in violation of Article 14, Section B." I stared at her, steam rising from my mug. "It's a canoe, Marjorie. On a lake. You hear how insane you sound." Her lips pursed, so tight they looked stapled shut. "The rules are the rules. You agreed to them when you bought here." "Correction," I said, stepping closer. "I never signed those covenants. The previous owner did. I bought the land free and clear. Your little fiefdom doesn't apply to me." She bristled, like I'd just told her Santa wasn't real. And right there, I knew I'd made an enemy for life. Since then, the harassment hadn't stopped. Letters in the mail. Violation notices taped to my door. Threats of fines, even though I wasn't paying them. Once, I caught her sneaking around back, measuring my dock with a yellow tape like she was surveying a crime scene. I should have taken it as a warning. But that morning, I shrugged it off and went fishing. The day everything changed started out calm. Early autumn, leaves just starting to turn. The air crisp enough to see your breath. My buddy Mark had left the night before, so it was just me and Duke, my golden retriever, at the cabin. I'd spent the morning chopping wood and stacking it neatly by the shed, Duke chasing squirrels between swings of the axe. By noon, I'd built a fire in the stone pit and cracked a beer. Just me, the dog, and the smell of pine smoke curling into the sky. That's when I heard the SUV. It wasn't the usual friendly rumble of a neighbor's pickup. This was sharper, tires grinding as if on purpose. I glanced up the drive and felt my stomach clench. Marjorie's white Lexus. And she wasn't alone. From behind the wheel, she swung out with her clipboard in hand like a sword. Her pearl earrings gleamed, her mouth set in that same tight grimace. And trailing behind her was another woman I didn't recognize, tall, dressed in dark slacks and a fitted blazer, not exactly lake gear. Duke barked, ears up, hackles raised. "Quiet, boy," I muttered, setting down my beer. Marjorie marched straight toward me. "Daniel, I've told you before. Save it, Marjorie. Whatever it is, I'm not interested." But this time, her smile had a strange edge to it. Almost smug. She waved at the woman beside her. "This is Miss Carter. She'll be handling the next phase of your violations." The woman in the blazer stepped forward, calm but unreadable. She didn't offer a hand, just studied me with sharp eyes, like she was measuring something. Marjorie crossed her arms. "You've ignored every notice, every fine, every warning. We've had enough. If you don't comply, we'll escalate legally." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Legally? Marjorie, You don't have a leg to stand on. This isn't your land. You've got no jurisdiction." But she only smiled wider, like she had me cornered. Before I could answer, Duke's bark snapped my attention. He was looking past them, toward the cabin door. And that's when it hit me like a thunderclap. I hadn't locked it. And sure enough, before I could take a step, Marjorie turned on her heel, marched up the porch, and shoved the door open. "Hey!" I shouted, running after her. "You can't just—" But it was too late. Because waiting inside, at my dining table with a folder of documents spread in front of him, was none other than Samuel Blake, the State Attorney General of Minnesota. And the look on his face when Marjorie barged in uninvited? That was the beginning of the end. The air inside my cabin froze solid when Marjorie stepped across the threshold. For a heartbeat, she didn't even realize who was sitting at the table. She was too busy scanning the room like a hawk, eyes flicking to the pile of firewood boots by the door, the fishing poles leaned against the wall, the stack of mail on the counter. Then her gaze landed on him. Samuel Blake, Minnesota's Attorney General, sat upright in his chair. He wasn't a tall man, but he carried a presence that filled the room. His hair was iron gray, his glasses rimmed in steel. He looked at Marjorie not with shock, but with that cool, prosecutorial stare that could strip a man down to the bone. And for the first time since I'd known her, Marjorie's voice faltered. "Oh, excuse me, I didn't realize." "Clearly," Blake said, his tone even but sharp enough to cut glass. He closed the folder in front of him with deliberate calm. "And who might you be?" Marjorie stammered, fumbling her clipboard like a dropped baton. "I am Marjorie Turner, president of the Willow Pines Homeowners Association. This property is under our jurisdiction and—" "No," I cut in, stepping inside, my pulse hammering. "It's not." Blake turned his eyes toward me, and for a moment, the weight of his authority pinned me in place. Then he looked back at Marjorie, steepling his fingers. "Mrs. Turner," he said slowly, "do you make a habit of entering private property without consent?" Marjorie blinked. This isn't private. It falls under the association. There are rules." He leaned back in his chair. "Rules that supersede state law?" The silence was suffocating. Duke padded in behind me, growling low in his throat, as if even he could sense the wrongness of what had just happened. The woman who'd come with Marjorie, Miss Carter, she'd called her, finally spoke. Her voice was smooth, measured, but firm. "Mr. Blake, if I may, the association has reason to believe Mr. Daniels is in violation of agreed-upon covenants." Mrs. Turner was simply attempting to trespass, Blake interrupted. His voice didn't rise, but the authority in it snapped like a whip. "Do not soften the language. What I witnessed was unlawful entry." Marjorie's cheeks flamed. "Now hold on just a minute." "No, Mrs. Turner." He stood, gathering his papers. "You hold on. Because unless I've missed something, you've just walked into a private citizen's home without a warrant, without invitation, and without so much as a knock. That is not community management. That is a crime." She gasped like he'd slapped her. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But the truth was, I'd been waiting for this moment for months. Someone with actual authority to see what she'd been pulling. Still, even I hadn't expected the Attorney General himself to be my witness. Blake adjusted his glasses and turned to me. "Mr. Daniels, do you wish to press charges for unlawful entry?" The words hung in the air like thunder rolling across the lake. I glanced at Marjorie. Her jaw worked furiously, her eyes wide with something between panic and disbelief. For once, her armor of superiority had cracked. And I won't lie, it felt good. But something in me hesitated. "Not yet," I said finally. "But I want it on record." Blake nodded once, as if filing the decision away. Then he turned back to Marjorie. "You may consider this your only courtesy warning. Do not enter this property again without explicit permission. Is that clear?" She swallowed hard. "Crystal." But the look in her eyes wasn't surrender. It was fury. When they left, the tension didn't vanish. It shifted. I stood at the window, watching Marjorie's Lexus back down the gravel drive. Her hands gripped the wheel like she wanted to strangle it. Miss Carter sat stiffly beside her, her face unreadable. "They won't take this lying down," I muttered. Blake adjusted his tie, calm as ever. "No, People like that rarely do. But that's not your concern, Mr. Daniels. That's mine. I turned to him. Why are you even here? I mean, I appreciate the timing, but why my cabin? He gave a thin smile, the kind lawyers wear when they know more than they'll say. Let's just say your situation has drawn attention. I wanted to see it firsthand. And now I have. His words left me with more questions than answers. But before I could ask, his phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, and slipped it back into his jacket. I'll be in touch, he said, gathering his folder. In the meantime, keep your doors locked. And just like that, he was gone. That night, sleep didn't come easy. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind. The lake lapped against the shore, and Duke paced restlessly, unsettled. My mind replayed the scene over and over. Marjorie barging in, Blake standing tall, the look on her face when the tables turned. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hunted. Because I knew Marjorie. She wasn't going to lick her wounds and move on. She'd double down. She'd rally her little council of retirees with nothing better to do, and they'd make it their mission to bury me. And sure enough, the storm broke the very next day. I was splitting kindling when I heard the crunch of tires again. Not one vehicle this time. 3. A convoy of shiny SUVs rolling down my drive like they owned the place. Marjorie was back, this time with 2 other board members in tow. All 3 wore matching expressions of smug determination. I wiped sweat from my brow, planting the axe in the stump. You don't give up, do you? Marjorie stepped forward, chin high. You think one little scolding is going to stop us? You don't belong here, Daniel. And if the Attorney General won't do something about it, we will. My fists clenched at my sides. This is my land. My home. You're trespassing again. Her smile curved sharp and cold. Prove it. Behind her, one of the men, a leathery-faced retiree named Howard, lifted his phone and started filming. And just like that, I realized the game had changed. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was war. The phone camera's little red light blinked like a sniper's scope. Howard held it steady, his grin smug, as if he thought he was about to capture my downfall on film. Marjorie, standing in front of him like a general, jabbed her finger toward me. See that? Aggressive stance. Hostile demeanor. This man is a danger to our community. I couldn't help it. A bark of laughter escaped me. You barged onto my land, uninvited, for the 2nd day in a row. And I'm the danger? Howard's camera tilted slightly, catching every word. Keep talking, he muttered. Duke growled low, circling close to my legs, his fur bristling. My grip tightened on the axe handle I'd left in the stump. Not that I intended to swing it, but the thought must have crossed their minds, because Marjorie's smug smile flickered just a little. Careful, she said, her voice trembling with mock concern. Threatening us with weapons will only make things worse. I pulled the axe from the stump in one swift motion and set it down flat on the ground, the steel blade gleaming in the afternoon light. Then I stepped back, hands open. No threat, just making sure you don't twist the story. But she was already twisting it. That was her specialty. Record it all, she hissed to Howard. The board will see every second of this. The 3rd board member, a heavy-set woman named Cheryl, piped up. We've got enough evidence. We can take this to civil court. He'll lose the cabin by spring. My blood went cold. That was their plan, to bury me in legal filings, drain me dry until I had no choice but to give up the place. But before I could answer, the crunch of another engine on gravel cut through the standoff. We all turned. A dark sedan rolled up the drive, dust rising behind it. The car door swung open, and out stepped Samuel Blake, the Attorney General himself, back again, less than 24 hours after the first showdown. Only this time, he wasn't alone. A deputy sheriff climbed out of the passenger's side, hand resting casually near his holster. The color drained from Marjorie's face. Blake took in the scene at a glance, me standing by the firewood, HOA members blocking my porch, a phone camera aimed square at me. His jaw tightened. Mrs. Turner, he said, voice booming like thunder. What did I tell you yesterday? Marjorie stammered. We have rights, Mr. Blake. The association, he cut her off, has no authority to trespass on private property. None. And yet here you are, again. Filming, harassing, and attempting to intimidate this man in his own yard. Howard lowered the phone a fraction, his confidence draining. Cheryl shuffled back toward the SUV, muttering something under her breath. But Marjorie? She doubled down, her face hardening. You don't understand. He's a menace. He ignores every rule. He mocks the system. Blake stepped closer, his presence swallowing hers whole. What I understand is this. You are abusing your position. You're using the HOA as a weapon to target a homeowner who does not fall under your covenants. That stops now. The deputy sheriff moved beside him, arms crossed. Ma'am, if you or your associates set foot on this property again without permission, you'll be arrested for criminal trespass. Do I make myself clear? Silence. Only the whisper of wind through the pines. Finally, Marjorie spoke, her voice trembling with rage. You can't do this. We are the governing body here. No, Blake said, his tone final. The law is the governing body, and you've just crossed it. Her face flushed deep red. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, trembling like a pot about to boil over. Finally, she turned on her heel and stalked back toward the Lexus. Howard and Cheryl scurried after her, like soldiers retreating after a lost battle. The convoy of SUVs spun gravel as they pulled out, tires squealing all the way back up the drive. For a long moment, the only sound was Duke's panting and the crackle of my fire pit. Blake adjusted his jacket and turned to me. They'll be back, he said simply. My stomach sank. So what do? You let me handle it. His eyes were sharp, determined. Because I've seen enough to open a formal investigation. The state's been watching groups like this, HOAs that think they're kingdoms. Mrs. Turner just gave us exactly what we needed. A strange mix of relief and disbelief washed over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't standing alone. But relief was fragile. Because later that night, as I sat on the porch with Duke, the lake calm under the silver glow of the moon, I saw headlights again. Not on my driveway this time, but across the water at a neighboring cabin. They flickered once, twice, then cut out. I couldn't prove it was her. Couldn't prove it was them. But deep down, I knew Marjorie Turner wasn't finished. And if she couldn't beat me with rules, she'd try something else. Something worse. The war wasn't over. It had just escalated. The next morning broke with a fog rolling low over the lake, curling around the dock posts like smoke from an invisible fire. Duke sat on the porch beside me, ears perked, watching the mist shift and break. The world felt hushed, heavy with the weight of something unfinished. I sipped my coffee, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because I knew Marjorie, she wasn't built to accept defeat. She'd tasted authority too long, wore it like perfume. Losing wasn't in her vocabulary. The question wasn't if she'd come back. It was how. By mid-afternoon, I had my answer. The sheriff's cruiser rolled up the drive first, lights flashing, followed by a black SUV I didn't recognize. My chest tightened when Samuel Blake stepped out of the passenger's side again, briefcase in hand. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Two other officials climbed out with him, both wearing suits, one carrying a stack of files. I set my coffee down slowly and walked out to meet them. Morning, Mr. Daniels, Blake said, his voice steady. We'll be quick. Is there somewhere private we can talk? Inside the cabin, they spread the files across my table. Pages of documents, complaint forms, HOA correspondence. All of it looked familiar. My name popped up on half the sheets, stamped in bold. Blake tapped one page with his finger. We subpoenaed records from Willow Pines overnight. It seems Mrs. Turner's been writing violation notices against you for nearly 3 years. Hundreds of them. I frowned. Half of those never even reached me. That's because they weren't filed properly, one of the aides explained. She was drafting them and sending them directly to a private attorney she had on retainer, bypassing procedure entirely. She's been preparing a case against you outside the board's approval. My jaw clenched. She was trying to ambush me. Blake nodded. And she's not alone. We've identified a pattern, misuse of funds, harassment campaigns against multiple homeowners, intimidation tactics. Yours just happens to be the most extreme case. Which is why, he paused, sliding a fresh document across the table. We're filing charges. I blinked at the heading. State of Minnesota versus Willow Pines Homeowners Association. A laugh broke from my chest, half disbelief, half relief. You're taking them to court? Blake's eyes narrowed. Not them. Her. By sunset, the news had already spread. Word travels fast around a lake, faster than boats in July. I couldn't buy bait at the corner shop without someone raising an eyebrow, whispering, "You hear about Marjorie?" Apparently, the sheriff's office had arrived at her home that afternoon with a warrant. Fraud, misuse of HOA funds, harassment, a whole laundry list. She'd been taken into custody, her pearl earrings and perfect bob looking out of place under the harsh glare of squad car lights. I should have felt nothing but satisfaction. But watching neighbors murmur, some in pity, others in glee, I couldn't shake a knot in my chest. For all her poison, Marjorie was still human. Still a woman who believed she was fighting for order in a world that had long since stopped listening to her. I sat on the porch that night, fire pit crackling, Duke curled at my feet. The lake was calm again, as if nothing had ever disturbed it. That's when Blake arrived one last time. No entourage this time. Just him, his coat draped over one arm, his shoulders a little heavier than before. "Thought you'd want to hear it from me," he said, lowering himself into the chair across from me. "She'll likely take a plea deal. The board will dissolve. The association will be restructured under state oversight." I exhaled slowly. "So it's over?" He gave a faint smile. "For you, yes. For her, we'll see." Silence settled between us, broken only by the pop of the firewood. Finally, I asked the question that had been eating at me since the start. "Why my cabin, Blake? Out of all the HOAs in Minnesota, why here?" He stared into the flames for a long time before answering. "Because yours was the loudest story. You didn't roll over. You stood your ground. Most folks give in to people like her. You didn't. And sometimes, the law needs a spark like that to light the fuse." I didn't know what to say. Pride swelled in my chest, mixed with exhaustion. As Blake rose to leave, he paused, hand on the porch rail. "Enjoy your lake, Daniels. You've earned it. But remember, peace is something you guard, same as freedom." He disappeared into the night, leaving me with the fire, the dog, and the soft lap of water against the dock. Weeks passed. The leaves fell, the lake iced over, and winter pressed in with its long, white silence. For the first time in years, no letters arrived. No fines taped to the door. No footsteps crunching in the driveway unless they were mine. And one evening, as Duke and I sat watching the northern lights ripple across the sky, I realized something. The cabin didn't just feel like a refuge anymore. It felt like victory. Marjorie had thought she could take it from me with rules and fear, with trespass and intimidation. She hadn't realized she was walking into a battle she couldn't win. Not because of me alone, but because, waiting in the shadows of my little cedar cabin, was the law itself, the state attorney general. And when she barged in that day, demanding control, she hadn't just invaded my home. She'd signed her own downfall. The lake held still, stars mirrored in its dark glass, as if the whole world was finally at rest. And for the first time in a long time, so was I. If you enjoyed this intense story, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping, cinematic tales. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next thriller. Your support keeps these stories coming.